Hi Larry, thanks for the footage and sorry for the delay in getting back to you with the online lesson. What I'd like to do before we get too much into the drills and changes that I'd like you to make is I just want to go over some sort of observations during your swing, and then we'll sort of layer in some detail with that. Obviously golf machine background, along with other theories. Golf machine provides much of the sort of basis of what stack and tilt's all about anyway. Mike and Andy both have a background in golf machine, then moved on with Mac O'Grady to sort of golf machine again, and Morad. And stack and tilt really is a system that heavily relies on a lot of golf machine terms and references, so you'll be familiar with quite a lot of this. And obviously if you've got any questions after watching the recap, feel free to just drop me a line, send me a message. Don't stand on ceremony with that one. I'd rather you ask the question straight away as it comes to you. You've got my email. Feel free to send anything over that you like. First of all, setup. I would like to see you with just a little bit more foot flow. I'd like to see both feet turned out maybe 20 degrees or so. In your case, right foot's pretty square, which is kinking this right knee in a little bit, which in turn is not really freeing up the right hip and therefore the pelvis during the backswing. I would like to see both feet turned out a little bit more, which would help with your stability and your mobility. So turning both feet out approximately 20 degrees as a baseline. Might even want to go more, sort of 30 degrees with each foot would be a pretty good starting point for you. With the feet turned out, the knees would be then turned out. Not quite as much as the feet, but they would be then turned out, which in turn would then free up the hips so that your movement both sides of the ball on the way back, P1 to P4, and certainly from P6 to P9 would be a lot freer. You'd have a lot more mobility, a lot more ability to turn on the way back and on the way through. So turning both feet out is a nice start for you. I'd also like to see with your grip, and you'll see why as the swing progresses, I would like to see a little bit more pressure on pressure point 1. So feel that you're going to squeeze the left thumb a little bit more at P1. That might affect the handle location a little bit. You might feel like the handle drops a little bit, which is fine. I mean, you're slightly above hand plane at the moment. Our baseline for our pattern would be hand plane moving up slightly if the player wanted to learn to hit out more. So the higher the handle, potentially the more out to the right the player can hit, and the lower the handle, that makes it easier to swing across the golf ball. It also changes the way the wrist's set on the way back. But anyway, I would rather see your handle location is not bad, but it could afford to drop down to that red line. So getting the handle onto the hand plane line, which that little bit of a tweak and extra pressure on pressure point 1 would help straighten the right arm up a fraction more, might push the handle down an inch or so. Doesn't need a lot, but could help just steepen the angle of attack a little bit, prevent the club going away from you too much post impact, or discourage it at least, which would again help to limit the amount of heel strikes that you experience. So just a couple of little tweaks there at P1. You could also afford to, certainly in my mind, feel like you're a little bit more on your left side. Again, that's going to help you with your movement of the left shoulder during the backswing and help you with what I want you to do from P1 to P4. So setup changes, both feet turned out a little bit more pressure on pressure point 1, and just a little bit more weight, almost feeling like you're 60-40 in favour of your lead leg at setup, and you create that by just flexing your left knee a little bit more at P1. You don't have to get any more sort of elaborate than that. Just feel like you've got a little bit more flex in the lead knee as opposed to the trail knee at P1. Moving on from there, I'm just going to clear quite a few of those lines away. we start to see, ideally, if you imagine you had the sort of golf machine playing board down, the shaft would be sitting on the playing board. The playing board would be on an angle of approximately, if this is a mid-iron, sort of 60, 63 degrees. And the shaft would run up the playing board at that point. The hands would trace the red line, so the hand path from P1 to P2 should be up hand plane, up the red line. And you can see that your hands start to come up a little bit too soon. When you're doing that, if you look at the face-on footage, you tend to see a player's left shoulder working sort of more level rather than down, which can potentially push a player off the golf ball. Doesn't really do it in your case, but you can see the left shoulder doesn't really work downwards from P1 to P2. Shoulder tilts are a little bit too level, torso's not really been engaged a great deal, and because of the change, or because of the setup position that you have, there's a little bit of flex maintaining that trail knee. So if you were to, so this is thought number one, you've got setup, some subtle changes, feet turned out, a little bit more pressure point one, touch more weight on the lead leg. From P1 to P2, I want you to allow your right knee, your trail knee, to straighten a little bit more, a little bit sooner, which would have the effect of freeing up the hips. The hips would turn more, which would help bring the hand path in a little bit more. So from P1 to P2, the hands should be working inwards more. The club should be tracing an inwards and upward trajectory, and that's achieved by the trail leg changing flex. So a little bit more weight forward at P1 makes this easier. Once you've got the weight forward at P1, I want you to feel like your hands are working in from P1 to P2. And the way you would check that, I just take you back to P1. When you're practicing, I can see you've got the canes down and the lines on the ground there, which is great. If you were to place a club along the toe line, about an inch away from the trail foot, and at P2, try and match the hands and the shaft to the shaft that's on the ground, and you can see there that your hands are sort of slightly more out in front of you, if you will, and they need to be brought inwards so that at P2 the hands would be more in, the shaft would be matching with the shaft on the ground. So the hands and the shaft at P2, we need to match up with this purple line, which would be a club in your case, or an alignment cane, just sort of in line with, inch or so away from the trail foot and angling away from the target. So try and match the shafts up at P2. That, allied to a little bit more weight forward, would help this lead shoulder work down a little bit more, and would get the body a little bit more active. We'd start to see a little bit more hip rotation, a little bit more torso rotation by the time we get to P2. So, hands elevating a little bit too much too soon. Then as we go from P2 to P3, you pay attention to the face-on footage. P3, a lot of forward bend maintained in the spine, a lot of forward bend or flex maintained in the pelvis, and a lot of forward bend, a lot of flex should I say, not forward bend, maintained in the trail leg. So at this point we've got too much flexion and not enough extension. Now if the trail leg was straighter and we got rid of the flex in the pelvis, which would then allow the spine to extend more, the left arm would be propelled further with less effort. So at the moment we're operating around the yellow framework. And if you got rid of all the angles that you see in yellow, so you got rid of the trail knee flex, you got rid of the flex in the pelvis, and you got rid of the forward bend in the spine, you'd be you'd be propelling that left arm and therefore the golf club further by this point in the swing, if you will. Yeah, so P3 would happen sooner, etc., etc. So we've got to start getting rid of some forward bend. The players with the shortest backswings tend to have or maintain the most forward bend from P1 to P4. What you then do is you start to lose pressure point 1. You see your hand coming off the club. Just going to run that through again. So if you look at the face on footage, you've got to squeeze on the hand, squeeze on the left thumb. Now somehow you've got to get this club to go further back because you can't play golf from there. So your options are to extend and get rid of some forward bend, which would help propel the butt of the club further, free up the left arm. Or you can start to flex the arms a little bit more, hinge the wrists a little bit excessively. And in order to do that, you're going to have to let go of that pressure point. So you can see your pressure point 1 is diminishing from P3 to the completion of your backswing. And again, that's something that you want to be aware of. A good feel for this, if you want to sort of generate this, and I'll try and dig some players out in the summary for this lesson, showing examples of the moves that I'm asking you to start to achieve during your golf swing. We want to propel the butt of the club further to create some power. And we've got options. You can turn and extend and side bend for longer. You can hinge the wrists excessively. And you can start to bend the arms a little bit. It's completely up to the individual as to which method is used. But some are much more efficient than others. So we need to get rid of that forward bend. And in doing that, we would straight away would have a longer backswing with minimal effort. So getting rid of the flex in the trail leg, flex in the pelvis, forward bend in the spine. Now that little regrip that you have and that lack of length of the left arm during the backswing is then going to have a knock-on effect. On the way back, you haven't really stored up enough power. So now you're going to go looking for power. And one of your ways of doing it is you start to unhinge the wrists a little bit more than you would want. You mentioned about the look at 5.5, where the sort of the spine's tilted away, the angles coming out the wrist, etc. in your email. A lot of that is because you're using the body. You've got to generate some power. It's got to come from somewhere. We've not really got a sufficient arc. So we're going to use our body excessively. We're going to start maybe potentially sliding a little bit too much. I'm not saying you do on this footage, but you could. We're going to start trying to pull down and load things a little bit more than we would perhaps need to. It's interesting that you comment on 5.5 because for me, I think that's really probably the least of your problems. I'd be interested to see how that. I think down the line, 5.5 looks great, by the way. But in an attempt to try and create some power, I see you sort of moving fast with the body, hanging on to accumulator 1 a little bit too much. Therefore, accumulator 2 starts to unload. You can see you really sort of hang on. Accumulator 1 doesn't really engage soon enough, so the right arm doesn't really do much. From 5 to 6, which is why the head can start to drop back on occasion, and you start to look a little bit tilted to the right with the body, potentially a little bit too much axis tilt, which can lead to low point issues, can lead to the swing being directed out to the right a little bit too much. You mentioned about having a lack of rotation through the hip, right arm straightening, everything going out to the right a little bit too much there. You can see on the down the line footage. So really difficult for you to turn the corner from P6 to P8. However, I do think you're going to demonstrate a much better move, certainly a different move, once you make the initial changes. Going back to the idea of being an inflection, if we look at it, we talked about the forward bend being maintained on the way back, on the way through, spine's bent forward, pelvis bent forward, knees are very flexed. This limits your capacity to unwind through the hip. It limits your ability to open up with the pelvis, open up with the chest, etc., etc. And if the swing is directed out to the right because there is insufficient rotation, so we're swinging in an arc, and again, as a golf machine guy, this will be familiar with you. We're swinging an arc on a tilted angle, and we've got to trace that arc both sides of the golf ball. So we're coming in a manner that's conducive to good golf, but then we decide we're just going to, instead of turning the corner, we're going to continue hitting out. So that swing with lack rotation, there's a good chance that we're going to hit the heel of the golf club. So we've got to learn how to turn that corner. You know you've got to do it, but sometimes, despite the best efforts, players just can't do that. So again, just like we want to get rid of some forward bend from P1 to P4, we also want to encourage some extension and getting rid of some forward bend from P6 to P8. The way I'd like you to do that is to spend some time hitting hard and stopping quick. So I want you to feel like when you're practicing, you're going to hit these shots hard and you're going to stop by the time the right arm gets parallel. Hit hard, stop quick. So full speed swings, stopping at P9. Now, in order for you to stop at P9, the arms have to stay on the rib cage. For the arms to stay on the rib cage, the body has to keep turning, and for the body to keep turning, the lower body, the pelvis, and the spine need to extend. So you sort of reverse engineering this. You, in the act of stopping quick, will encourage some changes in that position at that point in your golf swing. And you might find that difficult to do. Initially, I would think you would, especially at full speed, and it might feel unusual. But I'm going to give you a few other drills to try and sort of enhance that. So first of all, I'm going to concentrate, in fact predominantly I'm going to concentrate on your face-on footage, and I'm going to start getting some players up who I work with who are demonstrating the drills or feels that I'd like you to introduce into your golf swing. Okay, so first up is a gentleman called Dave I work with. Dave has struggled for some time getting the golf swing to be long enough. He's had a lot of injuries, he's had sort of knee injuries, etc. And often I think guys can use that as an excuse, as a reason why the swing's not as long as it should be. During this particular session, I'm asking him to do a number of things that are relevant to yourself. I've asked him to turn both feet out at around about a minimum of 25 degrees. So both feet turned out. I've asked him to flex his lead leg a little bit more than his trail leg. So as a result, he's looking like he's sitting into his left side a little bit more, and consequently the angle in the shoulders is not quite as severe as we see with yourself. So he's got upper centre and lower centre more in line with one another, a little bit less axis tilt at P1, courtesy of flexing the lead leg more. So feeling like, almost like, one of the comments he came back with was that he felt like he was on a downhill lie, and almost tried to recreate that every swing that he made. So a little bit more weight forward, levelling up the shoulders, which then makes the next pieces easier to achieve. Now, with yourself, you can imagine you're looking from down the line now. I'm just going to do a little sort of stick diagram, excuse the artistry here. So you were looking down the line, you are bent forward obviously in the spine, got some flex in the knees, and your pelvis is tilted forward maybe 25 degrees. Yeah, very some play to play, but there or thereabouts. Okay, so you've got some forward bend in the pelvis, some forward bend in the spine, and some flex in the knees. Okay, and Dave's got the same. Now, as you go back, you maintain that forward bend in the pelvis, you maintain that forward bend in the spine, and you maintain the flex in the trail leg. So you can see the sort of the back of the belt is still higher than the front of the belt. We've still got some flex in the knees, and we've certainly got some forward bend in the spine. So you've taken this image and you've turned it through 90 degrees. What I've asked Dave to do here is get rid of all the forward bend. So he's putting in some extension. And you can see how much further. Now, Dave historically would never get the left arm past this point. And you can see how far he gets the club to go back and the left arm to travel. So what he's done is he's got rid of the flex in his trail leg. You can see how the pelvis now is more level. Back of the belt to front of the belt. The hips have clearly turned more, so there's been more rotation in the pelvis. And we start to see that the forward bend, the extension in the pelvis, the extension in the spine, and the subsequent propelling of the left arm has improved. So we need to start getting rid of that forward bend now. The feel, I'm not saying this is going to be ideal for you, but the idea of getting rid of the forward bend is key. The feel for Dave here, the key thought, was to get the left ear to point to the ground. So those changes were achieved. You know, he's not in the ball there, but I've got some footage of him hitting the ball that we could have looked at. It wouldn't make any difference. He did this pretty well straight away. Dave's key thought here from P1 to P4 was to get the left ear that's facing the target at setup, facing the ground by the time he got back. So left ear to the ground, P1 to P4. Now we can see with yourself where the left ear points. And by the time we get to P4, it's in a very similar position. If the right leg straightened, the pelvis extended, the spine extended, the left ear would work down more. So again, it's sort of reverse engineering it. We're trying to get some extension in there. You're maintaining your forward bend. Dave's got rid of it all. And that's one of the reasons why your backswing is limited and why you then feel the need to let go of the club before then re-gripping it in the downswing. So that's the backswing and the setup pieces discussed. I want to look now at the hit hard, stop quick, and introducing some much needed extension to aid your ability to rotate through the shot. Okay, we look at the drill here is actually ticking two boxes for you. You mentioned in your email about making a much better swing when you had a cane or another club coming out at the end of the club that you're about to use. Duncan on the right is a guy who I work with. He's got the cane coming out at the end of the shaft, trying to keep that from his side. When you're doing that drill, that's encouraging better rotation. But you see, that rotation comes about because of other things. It's the subsequent effect of other things. Rotating alone is no good. You know, the idea of rotating through the shot is very easy to grasp. But just knowing that is not enough. You got to, how does that rotation occur? So with yourself through the hit, you maintain your forward bend and flex. So we've got flex in the trail leg, flex in the trail ankle, still a little bit of flex in the lead leg, certainly a lot of flex in the pelvis, and the forward bend in the spine has been maintained. Now, this is a drill that you can do inside, so this is ideal. What I've done here is I've limited how far back Duncan can take this golf club. So I've put a bag behind him just off the edge of the mat, and I'm asking him to hit the ball as far as he can with a limited backswing. Now, it's not going to go very far, but I want to try and encourage him to hit each shot a little bit further than the shot before. Because the backswing, oh, excuse me, pressed the wrong button there. Take you back to P9. Because in Duncan's case, the backswing is being limited and is short, the only way he can generate power now is by using the angles that he's created in his ankles, his pelvis and his chest to generate some speed. So he's got to start using the ground more efficiently. So as he comes through, you can see he's got some flex in his knees. Now, historically, Duncan would maintain that flex all the way through like you do. But now he's got to use that, and he's got to get rid of that in order to generate some speed, because if he didn't, the ball wouldn't go very far. So as he comes through, you see the legs start to push up, the pelvis comes out of his forward bend. So he's started to straighten up this ankle a little bit. It's not perfectly straight, but he's getting rid of some flex. He's started to push up with the legs a little bit more. So again, they're not perfectly straight, but they're straightening. The pelvis is starting to lose a lot of its flex, whereas in your case it stays bent forward too much, and you can start to see the spine straightening out. So limit the amount of backswing. Allow yourself to take the club back no more than, say, put a toe bag about here, or an obstacle like the box that's behind you. Maybe position it here, so that all you can do is you've no accumulation of power in the backswing, and then try and get each ball to hit that net in your garage a little bit harder every time. You're going to get the sensation of raising the belt, of using the ground, etc, etc. And I'm just going to show you someone using the ground very effectively indeed before we wind this up, and that would be Dustin Johnson. So Dustin Johnson, obviously big strong athlete. It's quite an unusual view for you here from P4. Dustin Johnson goes into the ground. We can see the belt dipping, the pelvis going back into its forward bend. So you see that the pelvis is more level here because it's extended on the backswing, which is something we talked about, than it is here. Now it's more tilted forward. Got back into flexion. Just going to clear that away. Now as he comes through the hit, in order for the body to continue turning, see how much the belt's risen? So it's the pushing up out the ground. You can see the right heel coming up. So the flex that's in the ankle and the trail leg starts to diminish. The flex that's in the lead leg starts to diminish, which brings the pelvis out of its forward bend. So the pelvis is bent forward here, like it was at address. At this point now, the pelvis is level, because we'd be following that round. It's always sort of relevant to the position in the swing that you're at, as to what you're looking at is not always the same thing. Yeah, so you're pushing up out the ground, extending, getting rid of the bend, getting rid of the flex, which is allowing the body to turn, allowing the play to continue to turn. So you've got hitting hard, stopping quick, and I'll just show you that briefly. Limiting the amount of backswing, trying to make every shot a little bit harder than the one before. If you're hitting hard, stopping quick, it would look like this. And some nice touches here actually, Mike demonstrating some of the changes. So we've got, like we talked about, at address with yourself, handle a little bit lower, shaft going at the belt line, both feet turned out, maybe 30 degrees. During the takeaway, trail leg starts to straighten, allowing the hands to trace that hand plane. Plenty of extension to the top, getting rid of the forward bend. Now when he hits this shot, he's going to hit it hard, It's a slow motion footage, but he's going to hit this ball hard and he's going to stop quick. So he's hitting the ball hard, but he's stopping at P9. And that starts to encourage better use of the ground, getting rid of some forward bend post impact, etc, etc. Big thing for you here, Larry, is getting rid of bends, getting rid of flexes, learning to extend when, how much, for how long, etc, etc. They'll become more clear once you start hitting golf balls. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Look forward to watching this progress over the coming months, and look forward to receiving some questions from you in regards to the changes that I've prescribed. Good luck with it, and please keep me posted.